Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a very tense and complex situation, the idea of a mutiny in Belarus, with allegations that Putin is turning on Lukashenko and widespread protests erupting across the country. This is a story with layers, historical, political, geopolitical, and it raises a lot of questions. Is this really a turning point? What's the truth behind the rumors? What are the stakes for Belarus, for Russia, and for the people living through all of this? First, some background so we can understand how we got here. Alexander Lukashenko has ruled Belarus since 1994. Over those years, he has cultivated a highly centralized state, cracked down on opposition, controlled media, and aligned more and more with Russia, while simultaneously trying to maintain a degree of independence. Belarus is strategically important to Russia, geographically, militarily, and politically. The relationship has often been uneasy, with Lukashenko trying to balance Moscow's pressure and the demands of his own regime. Then came the mass protests in 2020-2021, triggered by disputes over the presidential election. Many Belarusian citizens believed the election was rigged. Tens of thousands took to the streets. The response by Lukashenko's government was harsh: arrests, violent suppression, allegations of torture, repression of the media. Despite this, the opposition movement persisted, both inside and outside Belarus. Belarus also became more entwined with Russia's geopolitical agendas, especially after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Belarus has allowed Russian troops, served as a staging ground, hosted various forms of Russian military infrastructure. Lukashenko found himself more dependent on Russia economically, politically, and militarily. But dependence does not always mean full loyalty. There have been tensions, disagreements, and moments when Lukashenko has tried to assert independence. Now, what about the mutiny angle? The claim is that there's a mutinous turn, that Putin is turning on Lukashenko, perhaps seeing him as inadequate, perhaps using unrest to push him aside, or otherwise recalculating the relationship. We have to ask, what evidence is there, what evidence is missing, and what motivations each side might have. One claim often cited involves the Wagner Group mutiny in Russia earlier in 2023. During that episode, there was talk of Lukashenko playing a mediator role between Wagner and Moscow, and that this might have given Lukashenko a boost in international visibility and leverage. Some analysts argued that this could restore some of Lukashenko's agency after years of being seen as subordinate to Moscow. But others argue that the mutiny was ultimately in the interest of Putin consolidating power, not weakening it, and that Lukashenko's role, while somewhat visible, did not fundamentally change Russia's dominance in the relationship. Another angle is the protests. Are they spontaneous? Are they widespread enough to challenge Lukashenko's control? And are they being encouraged or leveraged by Russia in some way? Or is Russia possibly withdrawing support? Some reports suggest that Putin has signaled frustration or disappointment with Lukashenko's handling of certain things. Others argue that Putin has deep incentives to keep Lukashenko in power. Stability on Belarus's border, a loyal base of operations for Russia in Eastern Europe, and something to show as buffer against NATO influence. So, putting together what seems likely, there does seem to be an increasing fissure between Lukashenko's own hold on power and the expectations from Russia. The protests in Belarus have shown that Lukashenko's internal legitimacy is eroding. More people are willing to risk confrontation. Opposition remains strong, even under repression. Meanwhile, Russia likely views Lukashenko through a utilitarian lens. How useful is he for Moscow's goals? If he becomes a burden, by being unable to manage protests, unable to control security, unable to ensure Belarus remains reliably aligned, then Russia might consider alternatives. But replacing him is risky. Unpredictable consequences, possibility of chaos, or a new leader who might not be more loyal. On Lukashenko's side, his survival strategy has been strong repression, dependence on Russian support, economic, security, intelligence, and propaganda to maintain his narrative of strength. He has tried to position himself in between powers, not wholly subservient to Moscow, yet insufficiently independent to draw support from the West. But every protest, every leaked report of police brutality, every economic squeeze tightens the pressure. If Putin is turning on Lukashenko, what might that look like? Possibilities include reduced financial support from Russia, pressure on Belarusian elites to shift loyalties, encouraging someone else to step in, perhaps someone more pliant, or someone from within Belarus' political, military establishment who is more aligned with Russian interests. Another possibility is behind the scenes deals. Perhaps someone in Lukashenko's circle is negotiating with Moscow for a transition plan. Or Russia might escalate demands, more Russian troops based in Belarus, more integration economically or militarily, or control over Belarusian resources or border policy. But there are also many reasons Putin might not want to push Lukashenko out. One is stability. Belarus is already volatile. An abrupt change could cause chaos, unrest, or loss of Russian influence if the new leadership pivots away. Another is precedent. Undermining a long-standing leader with whom Moscow has deals might signal risk for other satellite states or allies. Also, the optics of backing a coup or forced leadership change could damage Russia's diplomatic standing, especially in contexts where it seeks legitimacy. What does all this mean for the people of Belarus? For now, it likely means continued repression, economic hardship, and uncertainty. Protests may continue and even escalate. The opposition is under pressure. Leaders are imprisoned or in exile. Media is suppressed. Civil society is constrained. But the persistence of resistance suggests that many Belarusians are no longer willing to accept the status quo. The geopolitical tug between Russia and Lukashenko creates both opportunity and risk for dissidents. Opportunity if Russia withdraws support, risk if Russia doubles down on its backing and tightens control. Internationally, this scenario might prompt sanctions or diplomatic pressure. Allies of Belarus or Russia may weigh in. Western governments may increase support for Belarusian civil society or recognize opposition figures. Russia may respond with counter-measures. Belarus neighbors will be watching carefully. The security calculus in Eastern Europe could shift if Belarus becomes more overtly integrated with Russia, or if internal instability spills over borders. In conclusion, while the idea of a mutiny, Putin turning on Lukashenko, has elements that merit attention, it's too early to say definitively that it is happening. There are signs of strain, increasing internal unrest, and shifting calculations. But there is also too much at stake for Russia to risk losing Belarus as an ally or destabilizing a neighbor it depends on. The trajectory will depend on protests' strength and persistence, Belarusian elite loyalty to Lukashenko, Russia's own strategic needs, and the international pressure Belarus faces. What remains certain is that Belarus is at a crossroads. Whether this becomes a turning point depends on how events unfold, whether protests can maintain momentum, whether Russian support holds or shifts, and whether Lukashenko can adapt or is forced out. The next period is likely to be dangerous and unpredictable for the leadership, for ordinary citizens, and for the entire region. Thanks for watching, and if you found this helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. Let's keep the conversation going. What do you think will happen next in Belarus?